Howdy, folks, and we're in another installment of the Antique Arms Almanac, or if you see this on Gunpost, my handle is Calgary Vetterly. And we're looking at another suicide special type pistol, and this is the Kittemaug 32 rimfire, 5-shot spur trigger revolver. Why is it called the Kittemaug? Kittemaug, 3.5 inch. I wonder what that reference is. It's the barrel. And this is your pretty standard, single action only. Spur trigger, 32 rimfire, suicide special. There's your, and of course this thing is unloaded, as you can see. But it's got a little saw handle grip, fairly long barrel, 3.5 inches for a suicide special. Some of these things are like, 1.5 inch, 2-inch barrels. And we have a little knurled, and as usual, there is some minor issues on that pin, as you can see. Grip marks from a vise or pliers to take this thing apart. But the safety notch works. The action and lockup is like surprisingly good. This is actually like a reasonably well-made pistol. And I'll get into the history on this thing in a moment here, but let's just have a look at it first. That pin came out real easy. A bit of oil on there, but let's get my little card here. Those are pretty clean. Do have some pitting and some damage here on the front, but nothing to get in a twist about. So there we are. And then we'll have a look here at the bore. Come on, there she is. Yeah, there's some good rifling in that thing, actually. Look how sharp that is. Yeah, it's got good rifling on it. A little bit of throat erosion there, but again, these were fairly inexpensively built, but this thing has a very good action. The hand, the cylinder stop, everything works on it great. Just put it back together, and now we'll get into the history on this just a tad. Yeah, it's a little bit dirty. I'm going to have to wipe this up, but oh well. Cry me a river. See? Very little cylinder end shake on the forward and back. That pin fits the cylinder very tightly. Not bad. This thing is perfectly safe to shoot in my opinion. And a lot of nickel on this thing still. It's in good shape, surprisingly, considering it's a relatively inexpensive gun. A little Kittemaug. And so the history on this thing is a little bit kind of up in the air because there's still some debate amongst collectors and people who made this, where it was made, and when. Now, if you look at the RCMP's Farms reference table entry, you look at the FRN on this thing, the manufacturer is listed as Hopkins and Allen. I personally don't agree with that. This thing is recognized as an antique, and it was recognized to be made in the 1880s. So it's around 140 years old. But this doesn't scream Hopkins and Allen to me. The reason being is Hopkins and Allen generally, with the way that they would have the cylinder pin held in, they would use something that they held a patent on. Hopkins and Allen wasn't really in the business of patent violation. And so I have, as a reference here, Suicide Specials by Donald B. Webster Jr. This was written back in the late 50s. And in this book, I'll bring it up for you, we have this. Push the spur forward at the end of the frame. This is covered by, so that looks a little familiar. See, the little spur. The latch system was held by Ethan Allen, Ethan Allen characteristic, and this is a four-handed Wadsworth type gun. And if you look on the internet at a four-handed Wadsworth Russian model, it looks almost identical to this. It's very similar. And even if you look at the blade type push-up here, it's also held by Ethan Allen, and it's a four-handed Wadsworth type firearm. So this was either made by four-handed Wadsworth, which personally I don't think it was, because it really doesn't have the same quality as a four-handed Wadsworth, and they already made a gun just like this. I think this is made by a smaller company, probably Norwich Arms or Norwich Falls Pistol Company. And part of what leads me to say that is it could have been made by another party as well, but I think the reason is the name Kittemaug, which, according to, I have it on my computer here, according to the book, Indian names of places, etc., in and around the borders of Connecticut, with interpretations of some of them by J. Hammond Trumbull, published in Hartford, Connecticut in 1881. The word Kittemaug or Kittemaug is the name of the west side of the Thames River in Montville, which is very close to Norwich. Just, the Thames River goes through Norwich, Connecticut. And according to the book, it says the name Kittemaug means great fishing place. In its appropriation to the locality it now bears, it is questionable and probably a modern interpretation or bastardization of said word. And the indigenous groups that were around the Thames River is probably the Mohegans. So this name, Kittemaug, is probably a Mohegan word that was bastardized by English settlers in Connecticut, which it now refers to the west side of the river around like Montville and Norwich. And so this gun was probably made around Norwich, Connecticut, and because it has a name of a local area, right? So this is probably Norwich Falls or Norwich Arms Pistol Company, one of those, and they basically just violated Ethan Allen and copied Ethan Allen's patent. This thing is a knockoff of essentially a forehand Wadsworth Russian model, and that's the research that I was able to do on this thing. But in the FRT, it is recognized. It's made by Hopkins and Allen. I don't necessarily agree with that, like I stated, but it is recognized as an antique by the RCMP in Canada. And this thing is recognized to be manufactured circa the 1880s, so 140-ish years old. But, kind of a cool little 32 rimfire spur trigger, relatively inexpensive for an antique nowadays. I think I'm being pretty reasonable on this thing. And if you have any other questions or anything, let me know. And see you later.